We're talking about the eBays in this video that come with the Mach 1 kits. We talked about this previously before we drilled the holes into the eBay. Now remember, we didn't want the sled to go right in the middle of the coupler and on the ring, because this hole right here where the bolt comes through would interfere with it. So we moved it off to one side, and that's why we have these holes here are for the threaded rods that will run along. But there's still one problem that I've discovered, and that is with the bolt and the washers. You can see that when we put this on here like this, the nut and the washers interfere with the sled, so it's not going to fit. I had previously thought it might be just the washer, but it's also the nut. So what I'm going to do is I went into my computer and I drew it up so that you can see it. And let me bring this up here. Okay, what we see here on the screen is the sled and that washer. You can see if I zoom in here. Let me zoom in here. You can see that the washer is interfering with the sled. So our first option, which I talked about before, was to shorten the sled. And we can see that here I've shortened one side, and let's see if I shorten the other side over here. So now we have the sled is shorter, and you can see that we now clear the washer and the nut and even the bolt. And there's still plenty of room on the sled for the electronics. And on the bottom side, we have the all thread running through it right there. And then we have these tubes that are shown here that will be glued onto the bottom of the sled. Now notice that these little tubes have to hang off the end of the sled. And the reason for that is if we don't have that in there, it's going to rattle around like this. And on this eBay here, this is an old one that I made before, it was a short sled in a long tube, similar to what I'm describing here. And the way you solve that problem is you can put nuts on the bottom of the all threads, and that kind of locks this into place so that it can't slide around on us. And if you're not going to do that, and if you have these tubes, we can have the tube hang over the edge of the sled to prevent it from rattling around. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. It's not the easiest thing to do because we have to position them right this way and then also this way before we glue them down. So there is some measurement involved in here. After I was thinking about this, I decided, you know, maybe this isn't the best way we could do it. Maybe an alternative, as you can see here on my computer screen, is I have, let me turn off the coupler so it's easier to see. I have cut out a slot so that the washer will clear the ends of the sled. And now I don't have to do hardly any cutting to my sled at all because it's already the right length. It's not going to rattle around on me. But this is a more difficult cut. What I plan on doing is just making one cut off of one end and then gluing these on. In this design here on the computer, I have to make a cutout as well. It can be done. This is a fiberglass sled. I'm going to cut it with a hacksaw, with just a metal hacksaw, because I like to use just hand tools, because I know a lot of modelers don't have power tools. If you have power tools, yeah, you can cut this a lot easier. In fact, the best way to cut this is actually with a wet tile saw. So you might go down to Home Depot and they have a cutting service there where you can have them cut this, because cutting it with the tile saw cuts it like butter. The only problem is you can only make straight cuts. So making this square cut here is going to be a little bit harder. Basically, you're just going to have to keep cutting in with the saw blade a number of different times until you get that nice square cut. And then on the end, take a file and then just file it smooth so you get this nice straight edge here. It doesn't have to be straight. There's basically, this is the only thing this is for clearance of the nut and the washer. And if you're going to go to all that trouble, then I thought, well, hey, I might as well put the placement of my battery and my altimeter on the board. And if I'm going to make a template for this, remember how we did the templates for this, where we did it on the computer first, we drew the circles, and then printed it out, and then sprayed the back of it with spray mount, and then tacked it on here, and then drilled right through the paper. You can do the same thing here, and that's what I do recommend, is make a paper template, paste it on there with the spray adhesive, and then cut it. But if I'm going to go through all that trouble of making a pattern, I might as well put the holes in it for the altimeter and any tie downs for the battery. So that's what I did here on this drawing. You can see I got my altimeter holes. Here's a hole, there's a hole. So these are for the altimeter, and these rectangular ones are for the battery. I'm just going to use some zip ties like I did here. And I'm going to need a rectangular hole. So if you're going to do this with a drill, what you do is you drill 2 holes side by side, and then you drill through the middle, and then you come back with a file and you can make it square. Of course, it doesn't have to be square again. This is only for the zip tie, just to lock down the battery. So it doesn't even have to look pretty. So don't worry about making it look pretty. And then I got to thinking, well, do I really need to use fiberglass that comes with the kit? And the answer is no. Fiberglass is overkill. The only purpose of this board right here is to mount the electronics. It doesn't provide any strength inside the coupler. The coupler provides all the strength plus these threaded rods. That's going to lock everything down. So the only purpose of this is just to mount the electronics. And so does it have to be fiberglass? And I got to thinking, it says, no, it doesn't. It could be plywood. So if you want something that's easier to work with, you might go and get some plywood and do this same thing. And now drilling holes, you don't even have to go down to Home Depot and use their wet tile saw, or you don't have to use the hacksaw like I'm going to do here in a little bit, in a few minutes. And then I got to thinking, hey, if I'm going to cut it out of plywood, why don't I cut it with my laser cutter? That's even better. You probably don't have one, but I do. So then I got to thinking, well, what's the hardest part? Even after I do all that, what's the hardest part? And that's going to be gluing these on. We're going to have to scuff these up, because epoxy, this is so smooth and so shiny that the epoxy is not going to want to stick to it. So we're going to have to scuff it up. We're going to have to scuff this up, glue it down with the epoxy, wait for it to dry, and that's going to take a lot of time. And I'm going to go through that for you. But if I'm going to cut it on my laser, I'm going to do like I do with my other eBays. And as you can see here, I actually went ahead and did it. So I cut out the outside. I cut out my squares to allow clearance for the washers. And then I also, to get rid of these pieces, I just cut some of these that are going to be the right distance apart. So these are the supports for the all-thread rods, and they will run through the side like that. And so everything's locked down into place. And so if I was designing this for myself, designing it as an Apogee product, this is the way I would start. But I would even go even further. I am not done redesigning this. Go ahead on our website and take a look at some of the eBay kits that we sell for the, there's one for an Aerotech 2.6-inch tube, which is almost the same size as this. Take a look at that design and see how I completely thought outside of the box, redesigned it, and get rid of the all threads. I got rid of this, I got rid of that, to simplify it even further. But we're going to follow the Mach 1 rocket kit here in this video. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut this down, and we're going to bond these on here, and we're going to use all the parts that came with the kit. And then eventually we'll have to come back and drill out the holes so we can mount our electronics like that. We're going to have to put in holes for the zip ties. We're going to have to do all of that. So in the next video, we're going to start with modifying this sled so that we can build the eBay kit that Mach 1 provided for us.